Julieta Duvall, welcome to Dirtbag Rich.
Thank you for having me, Blake.
What's the best thing and the worst thing about being a flight attendant?
The best thing is, I think, obviously the travel, but also the people that I get to work with and the people that I get to meet throughout my travels. The worst thing I could say is the extremely long days and inability to follow the cues of my body.
Oh, can you elaborate on that? The cues of your body?
Yes, I have struggled with this for many years. So I've been a flight attendant for almost 20 years, and I got used to eating whenever I knew I could. Because, for example, if I got on a flight to going to Japan, which is a 14 and a half hour flight from Detroit, the first service would take about maybe 3 to 3.5 hours. But by the time I got time to sit down and eat a meal, it was the service plus the time that I had driven from home and gotten ready. So it might have been close to 8 hours by the time I got to sit and eat a decent meal or perhaps use the restroom. So I got used to following a timeline of eating whenever I could, not whenever I was hungry.
Have you been able to circumvent that or get better at that?
Yeah, I think the last couple of years have been a really trial and error as far as like choosing trips. For example, I don't do international trips anymore. I try to choose short day trips and even my 3 day trips, I have space in between. My layovers, I like them to be at least 18 hours minimum. I don't do domestically, we do like 30-hour layovers in different cities, but the third day is a really early pickup. Like we have to be downstairs and ready to go by like 4:10 in the morning. So for me, that equals like a 2 in the morning wake up call. And I notice that when I do that, my stomach is like really upset. So I stopped doing those strips and just, trying with the system what works for me so I can follow those cues that have, given me a new sense of freedom almost.
Hmm. So you said you've been doing this for 20 years. It's
Yes.
still a struggle to manage, you know, whatever your body needs, early wake ups. Where did this career begin for you?
As a mistake, really. I mean, back actually when I was like 6 or 7, I wanted to be a lawyer. So first I wanted to be a writer. And my mom said, I grew up in Mexico, and she said, well, you're going to starve. You cannot be a writer or anything. I wanted to be a poet. I like to write poetry, and I said, okay, so if I cannot be a writer and make money, I chose to be an attorney. And then my mom said, why don't you become a flight attendant? I'll send you to every country so you can learn a different language and then you can be a flight attendant. I must have been 7. And I'm like, absolutely not. I don't even know what that is. No. We lived in Mexico. And then I moved to the States in 2000, mid 2001. And by 2004, I needed a job with insurance. And back then we were looking at the newspaper, so I was looking at the job placement ads, and Spirit Airlines was hiring a bilingual reservations agent. So I was the midnight shift Spanish phone girl. Like, if you push 2 for Spanish, you would get me. I was the only one actually
Hmm. For
because
all of
Spirit.
Spirit Airlines?
Yes, because back then Spirit was still pretty young, and their reservation center, their call center, they started in Michigan, so it was in Michigan. And they were starting to grow in Fort Lauderdale, but they're not nearly as big as they are today. Like that's their home base nowadays. So I was the only one. And a year later, in 2005, they put out an ad for flight attendants, and it was the first class of flight attendants that Spirit had hired after 9/11. So someone said, do you want to go? And I'm like, sure, why not? And I went in it not really knowing what I was signing up for. So, yeah. And 20 years later, here I am.
And now you work for Delta. You're like a senior flight attendant. You're at the top of the pay scale. Is that all correct?
Yeah, so I am at the top of the pay scale. I wouldn't say senior because Delta just completed 100 years in flight. So we have flight attendants that have been flying for 50 years.
Wow.
So at there I have completed 15 years. So I'm at the beginning of my 16th year. And yeah, so I do get good trips. I don't get all the good ones. Like this last month, I bid for a 2-day layover in Iceland, and I was not even close to being able to hold it.
Huh.
So,
So
yeah.
there's like an internal competitive market for the swankiest trips or the best layovers or stopovers.
Oh my gosh, yes. People love them. They used to be a flight attendant a long time ago. This was back, I started here 2011, but I remember seeing a lady with a tag on her bag, and it was a little dinosaur in the uniform of a flight attendant. And it says dining and dozing for dollars. And what she meant by that is that she would pick the best trips, and some trips are like really good. You just get to deadhead, which means just flying as a passenger to go to another destination to work a flight, and you get the same amount of pay, and you get to enjoy. If sometimes if you fly international for that, which is not very common, you will get first class if it's available. So there's just like different caveats there. But she would just pick the trips that had the least amount of work, and you still get paid the same.
All right, we're going to circle back to your life as a flight attendant over these 15 to 20 years.
Okay.
Maybe tell me a bit more about the transition from Mexico to the United States, what you did in college, what you might have done for work before you joined Spirit.
So in Mexico, I started my first year as a law school student. And then I moved to the States. I got married really young. I got married when I was 19 and divorced by the time I was like 22. I chose to go back to Mexico, but even after a few years, it was hard to get back into the life because I had not finished my degree. So I started it, but I didn't finish it. And back then, the paperwork and all that stuff about your visa and whatnot, I had to tell the immigration, office that I had gotten divorced and that this is what happened. And they made the decision to extend my visa. So I was able to come back to Michigan. And then I started working at Spirit, and it kind of took a life of its own. I always wanted to go back to college, but I didn't do that until I was in my 30s.
Hmm. What did you study in your 30s?
I studied literature, Spanish, which is my first love. Like I've always wanted to be a writer.
Yeah.
So I studied literature and languages, Spanish and Portuguese, and I had the best time. I really did.
Were you able to pay for that with your flight attendant income?
Yes and no. So yes, because Delta has a scholarship program. So I applied for the scholarship, and actually, I want to say probably 70% of my undergrad was paid by the scholarship and
Wow.
other scholarships. So I work really hard to get good grades because in my mind, I went back to college when my oldest son was born in 2014. So he was born January, and I started in summer school in May. And in my mind, if I was giving up my time with him because he was really young, I could not go to school and get bad grades. Like that was like my trade-off was that I needed to get good grades so I could get the scholarships that could pay for it so I didn't have to put that burden on my family beyond the burden of me not being there, actually.
So let me get this straight. You're a law school dropout. You got married
Yes.
and divorced early. You got
Yes.
Delta to mostly pay for your literature undergrad degree when you were
Mm-hmm.
in your 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have a family. Tell me a bit about your family.
My husband and I met on a flight back in December of 2005. He was a passenger going to his friend's wedding in Jamaica, and I was a flight attendant working the flight to Jamaica, from Orlando to Jamaica. I just saw him. I thought he was cute, and then I saw him again on the flight back a couple of days later, about a week or so, and we've been together ever since. So
Who
it's a
who made the first move, Julieta? Gotta ask.
my. I think my husband did the first move by giving me his phone number on the corner of a safety information card. I know.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. It was so cute though. So it was pretty cool though. But we've been together for, since then. So our first date was January 5th, 2006, and we have been together ever since.
And tell me briefly what your husband does for work.
He does real estate, full circle real estate, which means like he helps people, prepares the house for sale, sells the house, fixes the house, like paints, fixes. My husband's a very talented handyman, extremely talented, and and then he helps people find a new house, get the new house for them to move in, and he's just kind of like full circle.
Okay, does this mean that he's a house flipper, like who will buy houses and then sell them, or he only assists other people in selling their houses?
Yeah, so we have not done a flip. No. Yes, no,
Okay.
no, no flipping here. Yeah.
All right, I want to get into the nitty gritty of how money and time works in your
Yes.
family, and maybe you can start by describing that balance in your life as a flight attendant and how it's evolved.
I think it has evolved in the sense that because I have more seniority and more flexibility in my schedule, what I do is I bid for a schedule. So flight attendants get a new schedule every month, and we have to bid for the trips. So it's called preferential bidding. And then we get a schedule, and what I do is I usually drop every trip that I have on my line, or at least I try to. And the reason why I do that is because I drop everything so I can keep my month clear and build my month as I go. And it hasn't always been like this. I mean, there were times, I mean, I work Christmas, I work holidays, I work New Year's before. So I've spent a lot of time on the road when I thought I wanted to be home. So I clear my month, and then we build our month based on the activities that we want to do, whether it's a trip or perhaps there's something going on at home. And it's very intentional. I go week by week.
Got it. And so you and your husband are making these scheduling decisions month by month, or maybe even
Yes,
week by week, in
yes.
conjunction with what's going on in your kids' lives.
Mm-hmm.
And your kids don't go to school, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Great. So they got stuff that could be happening literally any time of the
Yes.
month.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you think you've been able to enjoy this very high level of flexibility?
Probably, maybe like about 10 years.
Wow. So really like 5 years of being a flight attendant with less flexibility, and then you were able to get to this level where you're more able to pick and choose your shifts and change them up each month.
Yes, it was a work. You still have to. I think at the beginning of this, like this 10-year period, I've spent more time on the computer by being able to swap trips and drop and, move things around. But that level of like, I don't really get on the computer a lot for the trips. So that's been gradually decreasing. Yes.
All right. And tell me about the money side of things. How well
Oh.
does being a flight attendant pay? What's the range of possibility? Is there overtime? Give it to me.
So every airline is different. They have different rules. Your pay scale is the basic foundation. You can work a lot. Some airlines have restrictions on time, like no more than, 80 some hours or something. But generally speaking, you can work up to like 100, 150 hours if you fly the high time trips. For example, when I first started in 2011 here, I was trying to fly Asia and Europe as much as I could because they were worth more hours in the same amount of days. Like, for example, a China trip or Japan is worth 25 hours for 3 days, whereas a domestic trip can be worth 14 hours.
For 3 days.
Yes.
Got it.
So the more hours I worked a lot at the beginning because I lost $10 an hour when I made the transition from Spirit to Delta. So I was trying to catch up. But the money has been something that we've struggled in the past. Like we have gone through debt consolidation twice. There were times where we didn't really have, you got paid and we didn't really have any money. And it was a struggle until I started to go back to the root of our spending patterns and really getting like laser focus on what's important. And at that point, the money started to be, I was the same way I'm intentional with my time, I'm now the same way intentional with the money.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yes.
let's talk about that a bit later. What's the pay scale of where you are in Delta right now? Like, what could someone expect to make if they were working full time? And if you choose to work less than full time, uh, what's the money like?
There's you're considered full time all the time. So there's a requirement of hours to work a year if you want to
Okay.
keep your, subsidized health insurance and all of that stuff. But technically speaking, you don't necessarily have to work. Like you can choose to drop your trips and not be part, as long as you continue with your education, your continuing education, as long as you keep up with whatever we have to do. I think the pay scale now starts at like maybe 30 or 32 an hour. But keep in mind when people think about the hourly pay, well, most people work 40 hours a week. We generally speaking, the average is about 80 hours a month.
Wow, that's much less. And what
Yes,
counts as an hour and what doesn't?
a flight hour. So our flight hours are based on the time that the brakes are released to and from the aircraft. So when we park at the gate and they put the brakes, those blocks thingies on the tires, that stops the clock. So we have two pay scales. So we have our flight hour pay scale, which is the highest one, and then we have our per diem, which is your travel expenses for, when we're away from where we're based. And then there's a couple of other pay scales there, but they're a little bit different. Like when you fly international, if you're the purser, you'll have something. If you are the purser in main cabin, you have something different. If you speak a language and you're going to that country, which I speak Spanish and Portuguese, so I flew Brazil from exclusively from 2013 all the way to 2017. So you get a little extra on that. So there's a little, some other things there too.
Got it. How does it work with your husband and his contribution to the family? Does he work full time? Is it more seasonal, more autonomous, or is it more restricted?
So it's seasonal for sure, and it's definitely more autonomous too. Seasonal because so we live in Michigan, and most of the real estate season buying and selling happens in the summer. There's a couple of things that happen in the winter, and then some of his like painting stuff happens in the winter. Not a lot, but we just kind of work around that. So I come in and out of the house. I try to do day trips nowadays because I do like to be home, but sometimes the driving gets to be a lot. So, yeah, so it's very, very flexible, very flexible.
Got it. And what's the motivating force between both you and your husband maintaining such high levels of time flexibility?
I think the motivation is that we have always been pretty just really enjoy our time together. And I feel like we have never known any different. So my husband did work sales for many years, 9 to 5 for a while. And then the pandemic kind of pushed him out of the sales job because it was like, there was no commission on the pipeline and all of that stuff. So we decided to make the transition for him to be home and contribute in the seasonal way that he had been doing. And then I get to bring home like the consistent every 2 weeks, there's always something coming in, but there's like flexibility within that schedule too.
Hmm.
Yes.
Okay, let's circle back to your family motto, which is spend less, don't work more.
Yes.
You said you had this sort of aha moment or this realization that when you got your finances in order, then you didn't have to keep working more and more or stressing yourself out. Tell me about that moment or that transition.
I think it really comes down to being afraid, to recognizing that I was afraid to look at the numbers. And if I wanted to work less, if I wanted to spend more time at home, I needed to know the numbers because then I was just working for not a specific reason. Like I was just working. So for a while, during our times when we got into a lot of debt, I would just spend, 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 right? I wouldn't really think about it. I would just spend, and at some point, the bank card would tell me that I had no more money left. And as I got older, I'm like, well, what am I working? Who am I working for? So I realized that I wanted the money that I made work for me and not me work for the money. So that kind of started me into the rabbit hole. I also like to go back to beginnings a lot. So I love going back to beginnings. Like I'll start something and I'll take it back to the root of something. So I started really digging into our spending patterns and realizing that I don't want to just work for money. Like I want the money to work for me, but I want it to be on my terms. Like I'm very like, I get really like strong, like I feel it in my body that I am not going to just work for the money.
So I'm still a bit confused. When you say make the money work for you, are you talking about having investments or so-called passive income? Are you talking about wanting to like feel a deep sense of meaning when you're doing the work and instead of just working for work's sake and to have more disposable income?
Yeah, so more so on the flexibility. Like I want to be able to say like, you know what, today I don't think I want to go to work and I'm going to drop a trip or not do something else. I want to be able to have the flexibility to say
Mm.
that
Hmm.
versus saying, you know what, I really need to go to work. Like I cannot afford to stay
Mm.
home for an extra day. Or even if my schedule gives me, for example, like 4 days off in a row, I want to be able to say, like, that's perfect. I am going to go ahead and take a trip or just stay home or, maybe take my parents out to eat instead of saying, oh no, I really need to find a trip there. That to me is making the money work for me maybe working side by side, right? Because I'm giving my time to this organization, to this company, and I love being there most of the time when I'm doing that. So at the same time we're both benefiting. I'm there helping out. I'm doing my job as best as I can. But when I'm home, I am home and I don't get to think about it. I don't think about it.
Mm. Yeah, it seems like you have a really good boundary between the company that you work for and your personal life. It also reminds me, Julieta, of like a kid who wakes up one morning and says, "I don't think I want to go to school today. I'm just not feeling it. I don't think
Yes,
I'm gonna perform very well. It's just I would rather sleep in. Rather hang out with my friends, uh,
that's
and
exactly
they just
right.
don't go to school."
Exactly. Yep. That is exactly how I feel about it sometimes.
You
Yes.
adult unschooler.
Yes, I am. And it took a while, I wasn't always this way. There were times where I would just choose to work a lot. I remember working a flight at Spirit to Cancun I was coming back from vacation in New York, and scheduling for Spirit back then was like really small. So John, the scheduler, he called because he looked to see if any flight attendants were on that flight just as passengers because they needed a flight attendant to work to Cancun. So after all this like sob story, he said, if you don't go, the flight won't go. So I felt guilty, and then I realized, years later, I mean, this literally happens years later, that if I had not worked a trip, it would have been okay. I'm sure he would have found someone else. I'm sure the flight would have gone at some point, but I missed that time with my partner back then. It was just the two of us. We waited a long time to have kids. So it was just the two of us. So I missed that. And for working a flight, helping out people I didn't even know. Like, I'm very intentional about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So let's talk a bit about purpose here. I'm curious how much purpose you derive from the actual work that you're doing as a flight attendant versus the purpose or fulfillment that you get from your flexibility and your autonomy. Uh, yeah, how does that balance out for you?
Uh, that's such a great question. I think the purpose, when I'm working, what I get from it, I get a lot of inspiration from people's stories, from talking to my crew. getting to know other places, like seeing how other people live. I love when I go to a new city watching TV because the local
Mm,
TV, the local news will give me a little bit of a bird's eye view of what's happening in their lives and what's important to them. So I feel like I reflect a lot on that, and it really adds to my flexibility, to choosing my flexibility when I'm home. So I feel like I still get more sometimes when I'm at work, but it has to be on my terms. Like if I get stuck in a place because of weather, like I totally understand that it happens. But if I get stuck in a place and it could have been avoided, like I get really because my time, like I can't get it back. So I really value that a lot.
hmm. It sounds like the reason you love the flexibility is because it lets you spend time with your partner, with your husband, when it was just the two of you, and now with the kids, with the family as
Hmm.
a whole.
Yes.
Is this are these relationships kind of the primary driver and kind of the primary reason that you want to have this kind of life in the first place?
Yes. I mean, for that and to do, I'm like a multi-passionate person. I like to spend time doing the things that I love, whether it's writing, whether it's crafting, whether it's podcasting. I just want to spend the time that I want to spend on the things that I want to do. I
I
mean,
just want to do what I like to do. It's
yes,
very
yes,
clear. So,
yes.
as you know, many other people who I interview on this podcast, Julieta, are outdoors enthusiasts.
Hmm.
What are your enthusiasms? You just mentioned some of them, but give me a list.
So I love going to bookshops. Bookstores are my thing. I love books. I love getting to know museums. I am starting to be more in tune with nature. I've always liked the water, so oceans, beach, nature. But lately, the trees have been like my companion, like my grounding force. So I'm starting to dive a little more into that. What else? But yeah, I just like being out and about, and I like to be able to retreat whenever I feel my like people barometer, just to be like too high. Like I really need that alone space and time, and that's why flexibility is so important because it's not always good to be spending time with a lot of people at the airport. Sometimes I get really fatigued.
Yeah, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
You've told me that you thrive on transition and change, which is pretty evident. And I'm curious what the opposite of that would be for you. Like, what's a version of hell for you in which there is not enough transition and not enough change in your life? And have you ever been there? Have you ever experienced that? And yeah, go ahead.
I think it's really there has been different periods of it. Transition, my job has been able to allow for those transitions. So I've always said my life is consistently inconsistent. It is something that I can count on. There will never be a dull day, at the job. And sometimes when I'm home, I feel a little bit stagnant as far as my creative process. Like not
Mm,
necessarily stagnant by spending time with my family because that's not, I love spending time with them, but I do feel how much I've gotten from being on the road and from meeting other people, how that influences my ideas or my creative process. So I feel that so when I'm home for too long, I feel like I go into my mind a lot and I get really anxious. Um, Before I go to work and sometimes after I come to work. I'm still working on that piece because the transition from work to home is like I want to do all the things that I was inspired by. And I have like emotional needs to fill with my family. So it really kind of stops me. And then the transition from home to work, it's the mind that says you have to do all the things before you leave, and I know it's not true. So
mm, hmm.
that's probably my version of the opposite of what I like in flexibility, the hell. Yeah.
Mm. just to put a bow on the money side of things,
Mm-hmm.
so you're bringing in the flight attendant income. Your husband is bringing in sporadic amounts of real estate income.
Yes.
And do you have any other sources of income that make this life possible? Any outside benefactors? Any secret? I love to just ask people like, where does your money come from? Just be honest with me.
Yes. So my husband does the real estate. We do have a real estate portfolio of our own. So there's a little bit of that. I do have some evergreen offers that I have, like some KDP journals from Amazon. I'm a human design reader. So I do readings for people. So there's a little bit that's not consistent. So it just kind of comes whenever it comes, and I welcome that. And that's it for right now. Really, those are like there's like different pieces of the pie chart when you look at where all of our income comes from. That's those are the ones right now.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you guys struggled with money and went through some form of bankruptcy
Yes.
in the past. Like, when did
Mm-hmm.
the ship really right itself? When did you start to feel like, okay, this is sustainable. We're accruing equity. Don't have to worry as much anymore.
I think it began in 2011. So, the 2008 mortgage crash, what happened for us was that we couldn't sell my husband's house. He had bought the house from his mom, and we couldn't sell it because we were trying to buy a place of our own that I could also be have ownership and have equity. Back then, we broke up once, and I realized, the money that I spent in the house wasn't. I didn't get to keep that because it was in the house. So we decided to buy something of our own, and we couldn't sell that place. So we became landlords by accident, really, because the market just didn't allow for anything to sell. And then in 2011, we bought a house for $7,000 back then.
Excuse me? A
Yes.
house for seventh?
Yeah.
You mean a shack? You mean a parking spot?
It's a tiny house. It has three bedrooms, one bathroom, just one floor. It's a like a little bit of a ranch type thing, but it needed a lot of work. So from 2008, the mortgage crashed. There was a lot of inventory. And what the bank wanted to do was to get him off their books. And it was closing, this was like October. So what happened, my real estate agent back then, my husband wasn't one at the time, she said the house was like 12,000. And I said, well, why don't you write the offer for like nine or something? And she said, you're crazy. I said, yes, but I would like to ask. I've always been that way. Like, I just want to ask. If it can't happen, that's okay. I just want to ask. So we did, and they said yes, and we moved into the process. And when we got to the inspection, we turned on the water, and it was like a fountain. There was like water coming out from every direction. So the house needed a lot of work because it sat vacant for a couple of years. And we said, well, can we get it for seven since it's going to cost us like 2 grand to do the plumbing, right? And the bank, my agent said, you're crazy. And I'm like I said, I just want to ask. They don't have to say yes. And we did, and they said yes, and we bought it for 7,000. Obviously, we put in like that was one of the reasons why we got into debt because we ended up putting like, I don't know, close to maybe 15, 20 into fixing it. And that was my husband doing all the work. So by the end, we were kind of like struggling to finish to make sure that we could pay for all the things that we needed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
And is this one of your rental properties now, or is it the house you
yes.
live in? It is.
No,
Okay.
it's one of our rental properties, and we just got a new tenant in that house a few months ago, and we gave the house some love. Like it was, I don't know, we were there, and we did a new painting, we did new carpet, we got a new window. Listen to me, my husband did all the work because he's really amazing. I just gonna give some direction sometimes and some input, but he's amazing. He really does all the work. And we gave the house some love because he has been a really good asset, and he has given us some important time with our kids at some point. So it's been a really good relationship.
Hmm. Julieta, I want to switch gears. I
Yeah.
don't usually have people who know about unschooling to speak with, but you write and speak and podcast about unschooling, and I
Yes.
would love to hear your take on, yeah, on the overlaps between your beliefs in the education department and then in the work and the time department, and then especially the purpose department too. Maybe you could begin by just telling me about your kids and their educational journeys and when you realize you need to do something different.
They're 11 and 6, and they are beautiful people. They keep me grounded all the time and let me know where I need to work. I apparently need a listening class lately because I don't listen enough. But we started in the pandemic, really. And actually, the transition into unschooling, which made me question the educational path that we were on because I was the definition of a tiger mom before that. And then during the pandemic, we had the opportunity to go into homeschooling, and I went into Tiger Mom Homeschool Edition.
Oh boy.
And yes, it was not pretty. I've spent a lot of money. I'd spent almost 10 grand at the beginning in curriculum. It was like
Wow.
Christmas. There
Uh-huh.
was a huge learning lesson there, and I will forever be grateful for my oldest son to let me know that the path that I was on was not the one that he needed. That was not the mom that he needed. So I started looking into, play therapy, or like play, like more play into our days. And that's how I got to unschooling. And then I started learning more about it and reading more about it. And it just really shifted. And then I read, Akila Richard's book, Raising Free People.
Mm-hmm.
Have you
Yeah,
heard
I'm
about
familiar
it?
with it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I read her book, and it really put things in perspective for me because in the book she talks about how we treat children from a colonized perspective. So my undergrad was in Latin American and Caribbean studies, but also being from Mexico, I was familiar with the legacy of colonization in Mexico while I lived there. So it really, really kind of shifted for me, and I started to dive deep. And by asking questions, she calls her this mad question asking, I also began to be very clear as to what was important to us. So it started with education, and then it kind of moved, seeped through into the rest of our lives. And the whole money situation, that was another thing. I just started asking questions. Is this what I need right now? Do I need a phone plan that charges $160 a month? I'm like, no, absolutely not. You do not need that. So what are the best options? So asking the questions through the unschooling route that we were on kind of helped me put everything else in perspective for us. And it's been an amazing journey, really. It's been
I,
really fascinating.
and I want to dig into this a little bit more because I've seen this dynamic play out in which a family has maybe a more conventional setup, parenting style, educational path,
Mm-hmm.
and then for some reason there's some crisis or there's some stressor in the education area, and they discover homeschooling. They realize this doesn't really work like we thought it would. They go into unschooling, and then the unschooling affects the parents thinking about their own work and life and careers and
Yes.
relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like that happened for you.
Oh my
And
gosh, yes.
can you maybe tease out a few of those lessons that you imported into your life after being exposed to them through the realm of unschooling?
Yeah, so I think the first one was the learning is not linear. Like learning happens all the time, and I had to stop wanting to see the results at all times. Like stop wanting to see those results from my children and asking them. And I'm like, why am I doing that? And I realized that people, society wanted to see those results from me too, right? Like
What do
that's
you mean
how
by
I
that?
got. Maybe, do you want to be seen? I wanted to be seen as a good mom. So, in order to prove myself worthy of society's validation and all of that, I wanted to be a good mom. I wanted to have like the house and, the things to be seen as a good family.
The
But I'm
status
like,
symbols.
the status, yes. But I'm like, do I really need that? And I felt like I really played that game when we went into the school system, because we were in a Montessori setup for a few years. And before that, being in the aviation industry, I felt like I was always an outsider. So it was hard to keep friendships that were not in the industry because people get tired from the schedule changes and all
Mm,
of that stuff.
hmm.
So I was always like an outsider in a way. So when we went into the school system, I felt like, oh my gosh, this is my opportunity to be normal. And I'm like, and to be part of this, like, the cool kids club to do all the things. And by 2019, I was like, I'm exhausted. Like, why is this what people aspire to? And I'm like,
It,
and please, this is no shame for if you're doing the things. This is not to shame anyone. It just didn't feel right for us.
and what specifically exhausted you? Was it being the homework cop? Was it driving kids places all the
Yes.
time? What else?
It was that, and it was trying to please like the school teachers and the parents, and having to go to the birthday parties when we didn't really know the people, but just we felt like we should. There was a lot of should, like we should do this. The Christmas gifts, the Valentine's gift, over the years, like the amount of money we spend on gifts, it was like for teachers, it was insane. And I'm
Mm,
like, why do we need to do this?
hmm.
And then, we got also some bad experiences there with different things about, timeouts. I've never used timeout with my kids. That was not something that I grew up with. So it wasn't part of, like my parenting style per se. But it was just, yeah, it was just different. And I'm like, what is this? By 2019, my second son was born. So I asked myself, is this how I see our life? Driving, waking up, and barely having enough time to see each other at night for the next, 10 years.
Hmm.
And it didn't feel good.
I'm working on this Dirtbag Rich book right now,
Mm-hmm.
Julieta, and just this morning I was editing the section on purpose and kind of the modern search for purpose. And I get this feeling that when people are in their later 20s and certainly in their 30s and they're kind of thinking like, okay, I got my job and maybe I have a relationship, is this all? This doesn't feel like it's enough. I feel like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people have kids and almost kind of gladly enter into the all the shoulds
Yes.
of the education system and the stuff you do with kids, and you go to the birthday parties and you drive them to the play dates and to the activities because it just provides this big sledgehammer of purpose.
Yes.
Even if it's stressing you out and it costs so much money and it's so tiring, and like you said, you barely make it to the end of one day just so you can get up the next day underslept and slurp down some coffee and do it all over again.
Yes.
But that offers this package deal of purpose. Like, you send your kids to school, you make sure they get good grades, you're on the same team as the teachers and the other parents, and then you don't really have to think. You probably don't have energy to think very hard about
That is
anything else, or feel
yes.
any anxiety about like what's my purpose on this earth.
Mm-hmm. That is exactly right. And I think it's easier sometimes to fall into those patterns to just kind of go with what people expect of you. And, I think from our older, the generation of my parents, for example, it was just like, that's just what you did, that you aspire to towards education, towards doing the best thing and not really think about yourself, not really think about what your needs are because you're given everything else for the needs of others, your collective group or the school, your work, whichever situation you're in, but it doesn't give you the time to reflect whether that's right for you.
Hmm. Yeah. So that sounds like some big thing that you took away from discovering unschooling that you imported
Yes.
into your life.
Yes, because
You
I
can't just be a
basically
self-sacrificer forever and ever.
no, I mean, I feel like when we do that, that's how your body reacts. Your body starts giving you the signs that perhaps you've been, people pleasing for too long. And the body really let us know, gives us the clues to whether we're in alignment or not. And we often don't listen, and I think that's why there's a lot of like illnesses and whatever. But I'm a big believer on that. So, being able to trust myself and to trust my body and to be able to look deeper because when you're trying to find your purpose, it may not be all good and, unicorns and rainbows at first. Like there's some like inner work to be there to be done, but also when you're choosing yourself, you're probably going to rub some feathers with people around you, and people would probably make you think that you're crazy for choosing that path, that
Mm,
it's true. And I often shy away from different endeavors in the past because I would share with people and they're like, well, that's not going to work. And I would be like so conditioned to seek this validation from other people that just wouldn't even think about it. I was like, yeah, you're probably right. That's probably going to happen. And now I'm like, no, let me think about this. Let me sit with this. And with unschooling, we had to basically take all of our beliefs and kind of really like, flesh them out. Is this
mm,
truly what we believe? And
mm-hmm,
if we did, we kept it. Like, yes, we believe that education is important, but how is it that we get towards, education? Is it the school? No, we definitely don't believe that's the route. So how do we do that? So there's a lot of reflection. But again,
mm.
I love going to the root. Like I love taking this, back process, so it may not be for everyone, but that's the way we work through it for sure.
Maybe you can give me a little glimpse into your unschooling life and maybe tell me like what is negotiable in your family. And I'm specifically thinking of what you expect from your kids and what's non-negotiable.
I think everything is negotiable in terms of meeting everyone's needs. So non-negotiable would be communication. Like we always communicate with each other to make sure everyone's needs are met. It's difficult sometimes because we cannot, perhaps maybe we have to go on an early trip to somewhere. So everyone has to get up early. But there, the communication that happens is that the night before, I tell everyone, hey guys, we're going to get up at dark 100 because we're going to the airport. Yes, we just got back from the Aero conference in New Hampshire. So we got up early. I'm like, this is when we're going to get up. And we have to be out of the house by, I think for this trip, it was like 7:30, which it wasn't that early for us actually. And I did exactly what I had said, and they were both up and ready to go. They packed their bags the night before. The Our daily life is really, I mean, every day is different though. Because of my job, it has always been easy for me to transition from those, like just be different all the time. Like it's okay with it. I like routine, some stability. That is for me getting up early and having coffee by myself.
Mm,
Like that's routine and stability for me. If I begin my day like that, then the rest of the day, whether it's experiments or a park or something, I'm okay because I know that I've gotten the what I needed from for me first.
mm-hmm.
And meeting in the middle is just really important. So we were in New Hampshire for maybe 4 days. I was at the conference. That was important to me. And I took the boys there and I'm like, hey, this is where it's going to be. Do you think you want to be with me? And they're like, no, we want to go to the pool. So it was their decision, like they were given the choice, and I was okay with it because so they went back to the pool, and my husband, kind of hang out with them, and I did the conference and the sessions that were important to me, and everyone's needs were met. If I had made my kids force them to stay at the conference, which it was important for me to learn more about self-directed education and alternative education and all of that. I mean, it would have been the complete opposite, right? Like there's no democracy there when I say you're supposed to be here because I want to be here.
Mm,
Like there were options. So, and sometimes those options aren't as good, right? Like have the other parent spend the time at the pool with them and go other places while I'm at the conference. But this time it just happened to work. And this is where the flexibility, making sure that our actions are aligned towards this type of flexibility is really important for us.
mm. What else have you gotten to do as a family, or perhaps what have your kids been able to do, even if it's without you or your husband, thanks to the flexibility of your schedules, the flexibility of unschooling, not being restricted to a curriculum or having to go to the same school every day? Can you give me a few more examples?
Yeah, so We loved travel. We went to Paris, and my oldest son likes World War II, so we went to Paris. We went to London. We have traveled to Belize. We did the World Schooling Hub with a really good friend of mine, and we
Mm-hmm.
got to spend time with other families that like to travel. So that was really, really, it was just really, really cool. Get to know people that are on the same page, and they seek learning from different cultures and just really blending in. We go to Mexico quite a bit to keep this relationship with their heritage. I still have family in Mexico, so we do that. We travel usually, we don't usually travel in the summer. So in the summer, because the airports are crazy, we stay in Michigan. So we go up north to visit my husband's dad. I have a friend up north too that has all kinds of animals and whatnot. So we love spending time over there. What else? They do parkour. So
Ooh.
parkour is important to them. Martial arts is important to them. They love the pool. They love just being around. And right now we're taking care of some chickens from for a neighbor. So they're excited to go and spend the whole day with the chickens. That's their saying. The whole day. They want to
Mm.
be there. So it's just, holding space for them and to really letting them get the amount of time that they need with a certain project and not expecting that they do all the things for all of it, for every
Yeah.
project that we do. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Not turning them into little corporate employees if you're family homeschool with
yeah,
deliverables and deadlines.
yeah,
Um, so while it sounds like um, the free time and free resources that you have are not committed to the outdoors or to travel in the same way that other people that I've interviewed for Dirtbag Rich, it certainly sounds like that your kids get to spend a lot of time outdoors. Your family gets to
they
do a lot
do.
of travel together. And
Hmm.
so it's sort of like distributed among all your family, this autonomy that you've created thanks to your work flexibility and
Hmm.
also your husband's.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's been a really interesting journey to realize how much flexibility we had before and to really value that and to really put a shelter around that because we are protective over that time.
Hmm.
Yes.
Julieta, if people want to follow your work, your writing, your speaking, what is the best way for them to do that?
Right now, Instagram would probably be the best option for right now. There's a lot of moving pieces. You can find me at the Unschooling Lifestyle in Instagram. We do have a website, is the Unschooling Lifestyle, but I'm in the process of changing a few things and making sure that my energy is in the most aligned way with my work, which I love, but the revelations come sooner than my time for writing them. So that's been a learning process for me. Yes. But
I'm right there
so
with you.
yes, my revelations are fast and I write and all of that, but they don't always make it out into the public. So, but yeah, Instagram, I try to keep people informed a little bit and just some of the reflections and the aha moments that happen. They happen every day when you have the space and time to look for them and to see them, to enjoy them, right? To be in the season.
Hmm. And last question, where is the next place that you are flying for Delta?
I am flying tomorrow, and actually, I know I have to be there at 6. I believe it's Las Vegas, actually. I believe it's Las Vegas.
All right, Vegas, baby.
Yes, always.
All right. Julieta, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Blake. Thank you for having me. This was very fun.